Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Tech Talk SMB. Today, I have as a guest an operations executive and executive coach joining me, Walter Yenkosky. Walter is a Marine veteran who has spent a decade in the infantry before making a bold transition into the tech industry, where he then carved out a career in business consulting, nonprofit executive leadership, and now he's founded his own consultant coaching firm where he specializes in helping mid-level managers and licensed professionals break through career plateaus and step into executive roles or entrepreneurship. Walter truly equips leaders with the tools to excel in strategy, operations, and personal effectiveness. Now, you might be asking, where's the IT in that introduction? And the true answer is that it's all in there. It's IT, it's any platform at all, any industry at all, because really what makes a leader, in my opinion, is not stuck in one industry at all. So, Walter, thank you for joining me here today. It's so great to see you again. Thanks for coming to our podcast.
Hey, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much. So I want to start by just asking something that you have on your LinkedIn profile, and right under your name it says, "I'm guiding the next generation of leaders." What is, in a nutshell, what does that even mean? I mean, it's very self-evident, but expand on that for us, please.
Sure, it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 50. It just matters, do you want to lead? You don't even need to have a leadership role. You just want to have the effect on other people. Let's get you there. Simple as that.
You know, it's interesting to me because when I first saw that, and maybe many people will think the same thing, the next generation of leaders, I think we might just assume incorrectly, apparently, but we might just assume that we mean that we intend, or you intended perhaps somebody who's maybe fresh out of college, you know, the next generation. But you just said 20 or 50 years old doesn't make a difference. So, but how does that affect what you're doing, be it a 20-year-old or 50-year-old? I mean, so anybody can become a leader.
Absolutely. The skills, the techniques, the behavioral additions that everybody learns as they're graduating from follower to leader, maybe into the executive roles, maybe they just want to be a leader in their technical field. It's generally all the same. And mainly it's interpersonal training. But there are individuals in their 50s that go, I need to make a change. And they may not want a career change. They just want a role change in how they approach their own career.
And they may have attended a real university or the School of Hard Knocks.
Absolutely. Does not matter.
Does not matter.
No.
So I have to ask you then, because this consulting company that you now have is still fairly new, but what inspired you to really get into leadership development as a career that you're doing now?
Appreciate that. So I left business consulting because I asked the dumb question, what's our purpose here? And the answer was to make money. I go, great, for what? And they said to make more money. Decided to retire. I'm not the guy who stays retired, apparently. Joined a nonprofit in operations. Half of my job is providing counsel to the executives within the org. When I decided it was my time to leave, I had to sit down for quite a while trying to define my own purpose. And I really found giving counsel, providing guidance is where I belong. And I said, where would that have the most effect? And that's with the individuals that want to achieve leadership roles or leadership skills. And I would counsel them and guide them to be those leaders they truly desire.
You know, it almost sounds to me that your own journey has made you a perfect case study and to point to for anybody who you're going to be working with after that. I mean, it sounds like you took a good hard look in the mirror and you came to this conclusion, and maybe other people who are in the same position, perhaps, or even not, may come to the same conclusion that it's time to become a leader or to get into leadership. Maybe.
Introspection is a critical tool for every leader to have. Because if you don't know yourself, how are you supposed to lead somebody else?
What do you say to people who are thrust into leadership by whatever reason, attrition of upper management or anything like that? What do you say? Because certainly that has happened. It does. It'll keep happening. What do you say to those people who are this is thrust upon them and they may not necessarily be the best fit or have the real interest or even the skill set?
That's really hard because it depends on them. When I look at a coaching relationship, whether I have that conversation with somebody to see if they are coachable, some of the first questions I ask are, what do you want? How can I help? Many of them just want out of that engagement, especially in the IT field. They want to go back to the basement with no windows. That's where they're comfortable. Some want to break out of their comfort zone, become a phenomenal leader. Some were aspiring that from the beginning. So it's truly, let's understand what you want first, and then let's help you achieve that. If you were thrust on that involuntarily, maybe it's time to leave. Maybe it's time to thrust it on the next guy. Maybe it's time to take those reins and actually take advantage of the situation. But if it's not what you want, you got to understand what you want.
So if the ultimate goal from coaching, I guess, is to the best possible outcome is to have somebody become a great leader. What are the metrics? What are the parameters? How do you define a great leader? I mean, and is that a fungible term? Does it mean different things, different people?
Absolutely.
What makes a great leader, and what is a great leader in your view?
So solely in my view, there's only one itemization of a great leader, and that's, can you invoke followers to follow you? Can you lead them? That's not directing where you tell them to do something. That's not managing where you're managing a process that they happen to be involved with. It's, if you start walking down the road, will people follow you? One of the traits I actually found in my own life, he just retired, and I'm sure I'll send this to him later, retired Colonel Doherty out of the Marine Corps. I sat in his truck for 7 months in Ramadi, Iraq, and not once, not a single time, did he ever make a decision that was self over team. It was always the team over self. Every single time, at his own detriment. That is a leader.
Completely selfless.
Absolutely, you have to be. The team is the one that carries you. You're no longer the doer. You're the enabler of the team.
That's an interesting point. But leadership, to me, I mean, or by definitions that I've read more recently to prepare for this conversation, leaders help make decisions, or you hear leaders, or the buck stops here.
Absolutely.
So, but there are different components to that. There's strategic, there's tactical. Does the same person typically make all of those decisions, or should there be separate roles for those types of decisions?
Depends on the scale of the org. The smaller that you get, the more you're involved in everything. As the small business owner would know, you're the jack of all trades, doer of all things.
Chief bottle washer.
Chief bottle washer.
Right.
If you're sitting in a Fortune 500 and you're involved in both the strategy and tactics, something may be wrong. Strategy, as we all know, it's the big picture. How do we get to where we're going? How do we achieve the vision? Tactics is, what are the individual tasks to accomplish the strategy? Again, it depends on the org. It depends on the layout of the org. It depends on what technologies you have in place to accomplish the missions.
You mentioned that colonel in the Marines. And you said how selfless he was, and he really sounds, he was somebody who clearly had an impact on you, it sounds to me. Would you say that he and other people like him perhaps have strong emotional intelligence and empathetic towards their team? They understand the emotions of the relationship. You have a leader and you have a team, and you need some empathy, certainly.
Absolutely.
And should that empathy go both ways?
You can't expect it though. A great leader generally has great empathy. He understands whatever organization you're in, the skill of leadership has traits assigned to it. Empathy, EQ, fall in there because it's a people-centric role. You're assisting an individual. I know in our pre-talk we were talking, leaders lead people, managers manage processes, not people. So if the thing that's fungible and manageable for you is the people, you have to have some level of emotional intelligence to go with it.
And that's industry agnostic.
Industry agnostic.
IT, healthcare,
Absolutely.
legal, financials, whatever.
There's a reason why absolutely phenomenal CEOs can jump between industries on a whim because the skill of leadership transcends. It's agnostic to any type of business. They inspire.
Do you think that somebody to have that level of command, and I mean that in the proper context here, as a leader, I should say. You said you just said that they can jump from one industry to another, but do you think that someone might be a better leader or perhaps better equipped leader if they have industry knowledge? I mean, how easy it is for a leader to jump from one industry to another without a lot of experience in that one industry, or does it not seem to make a difference?
There's a good book I recommend everybody goes reads. It's called Turn the Ship Around. Essentially, retired naval captain was assigned to a ship he knew nothing about. The team knew their individualized tasks better than anyone else. So if the team around you knows the subject matter, you can guide them and you're just enabling them to do the thing. If you're coming in as a leader on a bad team, it might be time to shake up that team. Maybe that's why the last leader left, because he allowed a bad team to form.
An interesting point you got there. But certainly you can't dismiss the idea of mentorship. I mean, hopefully a leader has the ability to mentor somebody. Or am I going off track here? I mean, mentorship to me is somebody with industry knowledge, perhaps, or well, let's start with that industry knowledge. If I'm mentoring somebody, I'm going to, in my particular case, I want to mentor them how to work better in the industry of IT. Mm-hmm. If I went into healthcare tomorrow, I would be ill-equipped, I think, to mentor somebody in that space.
Yeah, so let's pick that a piece a little bit. Mm-hmm. You as an IT industry leader decided to transition over to healthcare and wanted to mentor over there. I could see you mentoring on leadership. I could see you mentoring on the skills of IT. I could see you mentoring those leaders on how IT could be utilized in a healthcare environment. But I would also expect you to be mentored on the environment of healthcare. Because if you don't understand how it operates, you can't understand how your skill set applies. I mean, it's all inclusive. Everybody needs guidance from somewhere. We all can't be the subject matter experts of everything.
So let's localize this a little more to my orbit, and that's IBM community, IBM community to be more specific. But there are many people who have been, let's say, developers for decades, and now they're promoted, and maybe because of of just pure circumstances or their desire, or as you mentioned earlier, it's thrust upon them because they were the last man standing, or nobody knows the system better than they do, and now they have to manage it. But they may not be able to manage. And I have seen some people who've been put into that role and have failed because it's a difficult transition. I mean, in my experience, I've seen some managers who don't want to manage. They still want to be, they're still developers, and they can't break themselves out of that mold. So how do you transition? How do you do that successfully? Can you do it? I mean, I know you can't because I've seen it done, but how do you do that?
It's a shift in mindset. I mean, you really have to understand and internalize you are no longer the doer. You're an enabler, you're an assister, you provide guidance. You can step in and do something called servant leadership, where they go, I have a problem, can you help me fix it? And you guide them through the fix. That's enabling them to do their job. The best possible thing for you to do is to make the environment so they don't need you. You're there to assist and help. They shouldn't need you.
Interesting point.
Again, we were laughing before this. Every operations, every coach, every therapist, every consultant should strive not to have a job. You should work yourself out of a job.
Wow. I mean, sure.
Ideal
I
world.
can say that, right? Yeah, but it's a big world out there. I don't think that will ever actually happen, but it's a goal. It's a goal, I guess.
Yeah.
So let's keep going then. So, because you did mention 20-year-olds or 50-year-olds or anybody in between, but if you're working with a coach, if you're coaching somebody rather, surely there are some common rules that you're going to adhere to regardless of who that person is. But certainly I would think if you're trying to build a leader from someone who is literally in their 20s versus somebody who's in their 50s, I mean, how do those two things compare to each other?
So just me, myself, and my style of coaching, I try to get everybody to a baseline. So that's, can you manage your goals? Do you know what tasks are necessary to reach those goals? And can you budget your time to not only do your daily habits, but budget your time for those tasks, for those goals? If you can't do those three things, it's a very low probability you will ever succeed in an executive role. Most executives that I know are very time strapped and they do these things. So for you to step in and just wing it, success is very limited. That's not being said you can't succeed on a lower level leadership role. But I generally like to give them that baseline to let them see where the baseline is. And then we start coaching on how to succeed and how to grow from there. So
what you just said,
50. Yeah.
So that's not exclusive to people who come fresh out of college then either.
No. If you start fresh out of college, you'll just be getting 30 years up on the 50-year-old on developing these skill sets and making them habitual.
That's interesting. So, let's keep talking about being a leader. Surely every leader, every manager, every executive eventually is going to face a setback in their organization, whatever it happens to be some crisis, and the scale of these crises can be very small to very large. Is that something that you think somebody should be taught, or is that something that can be taught, or do you have to live through that experience to be better prepared for the next time?
Regardless of how you're taught, you'll never know how you react to a stimuli until the stimuli is applied. You can train up an AI model, but you'll never know what answer it's going to spit out unless you've done it a million times. And even then, there's a % chance it may change. So as you're going through this, there's lots of training out there. Your best results will come with experience. But yeah, somebody to help guide you along the way, whether that's a coach, a mentor, a leader that you lean on, even your own team. They're the ones who are going to get you through it. One of the things the military taught us, the team succeeds, the leader fails. So whenever there's a success, 99.9% of the time, the team gets all the credit. You didn't do the work, they get the credit. When there's a serious setback or chaos, you are at fault. That you never put the blame on them, you should have led them better. And that's just the way I was guided growing up.
And how do you know? I mean, I've been in many IT projects, or several IT projects, hopefully not many, but I've been in IT projects where you've had to reverse direction or change, make a major change in direction. Some of it of your own volition, some of it just external, budgetary perhaps, or people, or project scale, or whatever, or customers, or some combination thereof. How do you properly manage those situations? Because surely that's going to keep coming up time and time again. And how do you teach that skill to somebody to manage that, or is that a teachable skill?
I think it's a teachable skill. I myself follow something called intent-based leadership, and it's a conversation with your team. This is our mission vision. This is the end result that I want to happen. Help me help you get there. Again, your team is the one doing it as a leader. So if it's an IT project, you have some developers, some back end, some front end, some GUI guys, and you're making this thing. All right. Hey, the scope has changed. The client's expectations have changed, whether budgetary or just stylization. We need to make this change. Let's have a conversation of how it looks. Help me understand your specialty so I can present it to them so we can make this adjustment. You're just relying on your team. They're going to get you through it.
And when you're managing a project, it's a series to me of short-term wins and also a long-term vision, I think, if I'm saying it correctly. But how do you balance? How do you find balance in that, and how do you teach it to somebody to properly manage short-term? So I guess what I'm really saying is, when you come up with a project, you want to grab low-hanging fruit, as we always say, or what are the steps? Because you have to manage both the short-term wins and also at the same time provide a long-term strategy. How do you instill that in somebody?
Couple different ways. One, fail absolutely fast. Every failure is a learning tool, right? You know what you shouldn't do from that point on. Every win early, celebrate it. Celebrate the small wins. You will raise the morale of your team like nothing else. They will fight that much harder for you. But again, reiterate the strategy, the intent. If your team understands the end goal, they'll get you there. They'll get you there in ways you never thought possible. For example, random analogy, we're going to ride a bike together over there. And they go, why don't we take the car? And you go, I never thought of that. The team will help you. More brains, more power. Throw another GPU on it. Let's try it.
Another GPU. That's great. You mentioned the term to me earlier, and it was one that was interesting to me. But I'd like you to expand on it now. You said somebody who is so good at something, they're really so good that you don't want them, or they can't go into leadership. And the term you gave me, and it stuck with me, is unfireable is unpromotable. Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely.
All right, so tell me about that. That's such a great. I want to make sure I want to use that over and over again. I want to get it right. So unfireable is unpromotable. What does that mean?
if you're unfireable, this means you are the only one that is capable of doing this thing. And let's go this out. Best in the world at doing this thing. Only one that can do it. They can't promote you. They can't fire you, but they can't promote you because they need you to do that thing. So it's a risk benefit reward. So if you train the people around you, you train the people below you on how to do your thing, you're developing leadership yourself, you're benefiting the company at risk of your own job with the intent benefit of you being promoted, you getting more rewards down the line, you becoming the industry expert, you being the best in the world at teaching and guiding that next generation of that thing. But if you pigeonhole yourself as the only one that can do it, they may never be able to get rid of you until they can. So if technology makes a leap over you, you might be the best in the world at DOS until DOS isn't necessary.
It's funny how you use the word pigeonhole, because that's exactly what you're doing, is pigeonholing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in technology, where things are changing at lightning pace, So lightning fast pace, I should say. So yeah. So what's the remedy, as you said, the remedy, just to reiterate, the remedy then is to, that's my
lift
question.
everybody up around you. I had a conversation with another nonprofit executive not so long ago, and she said, I have this issue. And I said, great. I'm going to send this individual over to you. They're going to help you. You're going to call this person. They're going to help you in this other way. And you're going to have this conversation and they're going to help you. And knowing I'm a coaching consultant, they're going to look at me and go, what do you want out of this? My response is, you're a friend. Nothing. I want nothing out of this. They're like, why? You get paid for this. And I'm like, yes. But it's a benefit to me to have more powerful friends. That's it.
Okay.
And if you're training everybody around you to be better, you get better by training them to be better. Everybody wins.
That's a good philosophy, I think, to have. I like that.
Lift everybody up.
So what are the basic tenets that somebody you think should have? I mean, maybe is it possible somebody might come to you either now or in the future, and they might talk to you, and you, after some conversation, you may say, you know what, I don't think you have the skill set or the interest, certainly, but the interest or the something like that. What are the basic tenets that somebody should really have if they want to go into management and become a leader? And just as a curious side note, we really haven't spoken about IBM community per se, because again, we said these are skills that transcend everything. But what do you say to somebody, or what are the basic tenets that you look for? Are there three? I'm saying three. Any small number of metrics that you can quickly determine if somebody is really this type of leadership material?
Are they narcissistic? For one. So if they have a strong self-drive, they'll want titles and roles, but they won't have the capacity or empathy for others to lead a team. They will always put themselves over team. Never a good fit. That's chaos waiting to happen. Do you want it? I've seen individuals, the running gag in my old job is never become an executive. You're the first one in, last one out. It's a management role. You really need to have that self-introspection and say, I want this. The last thing is, leadership doesn't follow roles. I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast can just think of a friend that can guide everybody around them without a standardized fixed role. IBM or elsewhere, that if they go, hey, we need to do this thing, everybody will hop on it simply because they have that draw. So you can work on your leadership skills without ever having that fixed role. Minded, some are thrust into that role and have to learn the leadership, but it's much easier to have the leadership skills and then advance into the role. Your chance of success is significantly higher.
You know, conversely to what you just said, you hear the old expression, people don't leave companies, they leave people. Because there are some people who certainly are just toxic or just not or ill-fitted to be in certain management positions. And I hear that often. Sadly, I'm stuck in this job because my boss is whatever.
Same thing. I've always heard people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. You could have a job that is perfectly manageable, but if you have a manager, and I say that definitionally, or leader that is not good at leading, chances are there's going to be a high attrition or turnover in that role.
Well, eventually somebody has to, once is I forget the exact, once is a perchance, two, it eventually becomes a pattern. Eventually you have to start looking at the lowest common denominator here. If you see such a high level of attrition, shouldn't somebody take a step back and say, hey, we're losing good people here because of the person in charge?
You would think so, and I'll speak to an example I'm firsthand familiar with. I was speaking with a industry leader and entrepreneur in an environment that specializes in minimum wage individuals. He and I are diametrically opposed on leadership. His is, I will overwork everybody, and the moment they complain, I'm going to fire them, and those that don't complain, I'm going to promote. And that way he got a whole bunch of people that were overworked but grateful for the opportunity. Now, you could do that in a very low skill environment. However, when you get into the technical trades, even the blue collar trades, they want to be treated with respect, a little bit of autonomy as much as you can give them, and just be treated like decent human beings. And he never left that industry. He actually sold for a large sum of money, and he got rewarded for it. So he thought that was the only leadership style that out there that was profitable. He was never trained otherwise.
Interesting. And so in technology, but it's hardly unique to technology, but in technology, very often a CIO, for example, will manage many teams with all differing technologies, different and diverse teams themselves, and that goes to technology and in people themselves. Are there any tips or any ideas you can share with us how to manage a very diverse team, be it technologically different or just culturally different or whatever, just diversity in general? How do you manage that?
So I'm a big proponent of excellence in basics. All right. If you ever look at a high performing individual, it's because they do the very small beginner level things perfectly or flawlessly. That being said, if you're managing a wide array of individuals, right, you can only successfully manage, I believe the metric is 3 to 7, right? That's it. That's how many you can keep track of. So find 3 to 7, manage that well, and allow the teams that are high performing to stay high performing. Don't be the micromanager. Don't overbear. Provide guidance and support. Track what you need to track. Make sure they're following intent. And again, your job is not the doer. Your job is the enabler. They're supposed to come to you to say, I need help. So it makes it easy if you premise every conversation like I do. How can I help? Makes it simple.
Before I start wrapping this up, you mentioned that Colonel at the very beginning of our conversation. Are there any other people in industry, whether you know them personally or not, are there any people that you admire who you can point to and say that's, that person truly embodies my philosophy or just does such a great job with their own team? Is there any one person or any one industry perhaps that is better suited for what, for that role, or any one person or team manager or anything like that that might jump out at you?
So I don't agree with all of his methods. I don't agree with a lot of his philosophies. But everybody knows him. Everybody loves him or hates him. I'm going to go with Elon Musk. And there's a reason why. So if you ask him what he wants, he has a singular answer: to put people on Mars. There is no second step there. He knows absolutely what he wants and how to get there. He has different strategies that he's approaching, whether it's through Doge and reducing regulation for the spaceships, whether it's I think it's Grok with X platform, helping generate an AI model to work the spaceships, telemetry and everything else as you get into space. Whether it's his efficiencies within his company. I mean, you let go of 80%-ish of old Twitter, and there's no significant decrease in functionality. I mean, the absolute focus and drive to do the thing. And the thing is getting people on Mars. He's singular focus, singular intent, and his team, those that remain, are absolutely loyal to that because he shows them a vision and guidance that gets you there. He's not too proud of himself to admit defeats. I mean, there's a video of him where he gets called out from a YouTuber. They're talking about venting gases. And he's like, I never thought of that. And the next revision, they did it. So again, understand where you're going, be singular-minded in it, and help your team and strive along the way. I think that's a shining example, whether you agree with them or not.
Laser focus.
Laser focused.
You make a point. Absolutely. You make a point. That's an interesting point. Thank you for that. Well, I'll tell you what, Walter, this was great. This was really great. I think a lot of people are going to really benefit from this. And we talked so little about IBM per se, or even tech, even the tech industry per se. It doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad I brought you in because I think a lot of people could or will benefit from this. And there are people who are moving into management all the time. It doesn't matter what industry they're in.
Yeah.
And and again, your ability to communicate what's necessary is really it transcends industry, which I love. So that's really great. Any before I officially wrap this up, any final thoughts you want to share with our audience here? Any final thoughts or resources you may want to point out, or anything to that end?
One thing for the audience, I'm going to challenge you, and it's not going to be easy, but I want you to look at everybody in your day-to-day life, your own leaders, your own managers, your peers, your subordinates. Who's a good leader? Who's not? And then itemize why. Find out if you want to exhibit those traits or not, and really examine it. And that gets into that self-introspection. On a more personal note, if they want to hop over to my website, yenkosky.com, Yenkosky. Happy to talk. Feel free, send me a LinkedIn. Happy to be a resource.
Terrific. And just so everybody, you're based in California.
I am.
Not that that should matter with thankfully the technology, back to technology.
Whole bunch of tech experts. I need you here in person.
There you go. Walter, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we got this opportunity to talk and to capture this conversation finally on a podcast. It's been one that's been on my mind for quite some time. I'm glad we finally got this done, and that's on me. But thank you very much. Always a pleasure. And to everybody who is listening, I hope you enjoyed our podcast on guiding the next generation of leaders. What a great tagline and what a great conversation we had. So thank you very much, Walter.
Happy to help.
Great. Everybody, see you next time, and we'll see you then. Bye now.